everyone, this is Emily Leapart here for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video I'm sharing two monochromatic ombre cards featuring the Heat Embossing bundle. The products featured in this video are the new Treat Yourself sentiment stamp and coordinating dies in a fun modern font, the Party Vibes background stamp, which has so many cute little images. There are so many options with backgrounds like this, and two new colors of embossing powder, Jelly Donut Sparkle and Lollipop Sparkle. I love sparkle powders, and these ones are super sparkly and so pretty. They also coordinate with existing ink and cardstock colors by the same names, Jelly Donut and Lollipop. For my first card, I'll be using Lavender Glaze, Jelly Donut and Eggplant inks, and cardstock with the new Jelly Donut Sparkle embossing powder. For my second card, I'll be using Cupcake, Strawberry Milkshake, and Lollipop inks with the new Lollipop Sparkle embossing powder. I started both cards by trimming panels of coordinating cardstock, one of 1.5 inches by 4.25 inches, and two strips of 2 inches by 4.25 inches. When I tape them together, they form a perfect ombre A2 panel. As I mentioned in my last video for the stamping bundle, I pushed the pieces together as close as possible to create a seamless look. This is especially important when stamping or heat embossing on these panels. Before I stamp and heat emboss the Party Vibes background on the purple panel, I'm going to use a piece of the T.E. Misty double-sided grid paper. This paper is really thick and of high quality, so it can be reused many times. I use a piece of removable tape to stick the panel in the center. Then I center the stamp over the cardstock panel and pick it up with the lid and remove the foam insert. Since this is a rubber cling stamp, I won't be needing the spacer. Next, I'm going to use the anti-static powder tool over the entire panel. I actually forgot to do this on my first attempt, and it was a complete disaster since the embossing powder practically filled in all of the little images. So this is actually my second attempt, and you'll see exactly how amazing this little tool is for all of the intricate little lines on this background stamp. I ink up the background with Versamark ink and use the Just Press tool to apply even pressure. Then ink it up and stamp it again for perfect coverage. Next, I applied Jelly Donut Sparkle embossing powder, and while this was messy, it produced incredibly beautiful results. I loved watching it heat set across all 3 shades of purple cardstock. It showed up the most on the top and bottom panels because of the contrast. It blended into the center panel because it's obviously a perfect match given that it's Jelly Donut. Doesn't it look amazing? I could look at it all day. Next, I'm going to stamp 2 of the sentiments from Treat Yourself, the Hip Hip Hooray and Happy Birthday sentiments. I'm going to use the ink cubes for the corresponding ink colors to create an ombre effect within each sentiment. When I went to blend it further and stamp it again with Lavender Glaze, the panel moved and I got a shadow. While it looked okay, I wasn't happy with it, so I just flipped the panel 180 degrees and re-stamped the ombre sentiments. In the comparison, you can see that both versions were usable, but I prefer the crisp version. I'll still die cut the shadow version and use it as a stacked layer for dimension. The cardstock won't go to waste. To create more visual interest on the card, I'm going to die cut the largest of the Frame and Frame 2 dies on the Party Vibes background. I remove the outermost section and layer the scalloped border onto a second piece for a slight bit of dimension. I use Barely Art liquid glue to adhere all the pieces to the sugar cube card base. The middle section is adhered as 1 layer and the frame is 2 layers. Using liquid glue allows me to use the frame to check that the centerpiece is positioned properly before applying glue to the frame. I die cut 2 more of each sentiment and layer them 3 high. Then I attach them to the card. The fact that the Jelly Donut section is more plain works out perfectly since it allows the sentiments to show up better. This card is so much fun, isn't it? I love all the sparkle. There's so much to look at, and yet it's still clean and simple. Let's move on to my second card. I wanted to do something different for my first card, so I'm going to use the Balloon Party Layering Stencil and Clear combo. I'll be using the coordinating inks and blender brushes to create a second layer of ombre balloons on the pink panels. I line up the panel to the top right hand corner of these 6x6 stencils and place them on a stencil mat. I start with stencil number 1, a pastel blender brush and cupcake ink. Then I switch to a bitty blender brush and strawberry milkshake ink, and finally a lollipop blender brush with lollipop ink. It's so fun watching all these balloon layers form into a beautiful background. Next, I'm going to stamp and heat emboss the confetti details from the coordinating clear stamp. I'm going to embellish 5 of the balloons as well as the sentiment with the new Lollipop Sparkle embossing powder. Make sure that the ink has dried somewhat before using the anti-static powder tool on the panel. Then I stamp the images with Versamark ink, apply Lollipop Sparkle embossing powder, and heat set it. I repeat this process until all 5 of the balloons have been embellished. Then I stamp the sentiments, first with Lollipop ink, then with Versamark ink, and heat emboss with Lollipop Sparkle embossing powder. After die cutting, here's how they look. I try both out and decide that Let's Party looks better with this design. I trim 1/8 of an inch off each side of the stenciled panel and attach it to a sugar cube card base with a tape runner. I once again stack the sentiment 3 high and attach it to the card. And now my second card is done. I hope you enjoyed both these samples and the different ideas for using various shades of purple and pink inks with their coordinating cardstock and new sparkle embossing powders. The heat embossing bundle would make a great addition to your crafty stash, and it would also be an amazing gift for a crafty friend who happens to love heat embossing. I look forward to seeing what you create with these products. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed for more inspiration. You can find all of these products in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.